Hello, everyone. It's Don again, and you are listening to the Connecting Point podcast. Hey, thanks for joining me for episode 5 of our series called The Life of Joseph. Last week, we found out that Joseph was sold to a very wealthy Egyptian man by the name of Potiphar. Oddly enough, since we don't normally hear these words in the same context, but Joseph was very successful as a slave. He was a very successful slave. You don't normally hear those two words together, but that was the truth about him. And I know that's kind of weird, right? But it's true. And the Bible said that Potiphar's house was such a success. Why? Because Joseph was there. And the thing is, Potiphar trusted him because he knew that Joseph was not only a man of integrity, but he was never afraid to do the work. In fact, wherever he went, he served. He had a heart and an attitude of a servant. Because of this, Potiphar put all his trust in Joseph. He let Joseph run his entire household. Hey, you know what? If you're forced to be, someone who's serving just like Joseph was, then you might as well make the best of it. This is the kind of thinking that comes from Jesus. And again, we've talked about this every week, but there are so many parallels between the life of Joseph and the life of Jesus. So look at this in Luke chapter 16, verse 12. And if you have not been trustworthy with someone else's property, who will give you property of your own? You know, Joseph had an absolutely great attitude. Whatever work he did it as unto the Lord. That's the way that he operated in everything that he did. And because of that, he rose up the ladder quickly. One of the things that I think too often we miss in this particular story is the fact that this took years, right? Like we read it and it's just like a couple of chapters in Genesis, like there it is and it's over, no big deal. But this is literally years. We read over this and it seems like he just goes from like home to the pit to Potiphar's house, straight to prison. And it just, you know what? It didn't happen that way. It took years for all of this to take place, starting at about the time he was 17 years old, and years later. So when he landed in Egypt, he didn't speak the language right away. You can't be the boss of a bunch of people if you can't communicate with them. That's tough, right? So he had to learn the language, and that took time. He also had not only to learn the language, but he had to learn the culture, and then he had to overcome the culture because of his beliefs and to stay true to his God and to remain someone who lived a righteous life. The Egyptians felt like in that time they felt racially superior to basically everyone around them. They wouldn't eat with those people. If someone had a beard, right, the Egyptians would think they were dirty and gross, just like today. It's just nothing's changed. Sorry to you that have a beard. Sorry, Jim. So anyway, where was I? They had all these cultural biases, the Egyptians back then. So he's got to overcome all this stuff, and his attitude through all of that is just absolutely stellar. And Joseph passes the test, and Potiphar puts him in charge of everything. Did I happen to mention that Joseph was a pretty good-looking guy? Like he was good-looking. I mean, he was like Brad Pitt meets Bradley Cooper meets Brad Garrett. Maybe not Brad Garrett. I couldn't think of another Brad, right? He's the freakishly tall brother in that show Everybody Loves Raymond. That's Brad Garrett. Anyway, I couldn't think of another Brad. I just saw him on another show the other day. I can't think of what it was. Maybe Law and Order or something, and he was like a bad guy, and like that was kind of a different role. Anyway, not Brad Garrett, but anyway, Joseph is a really good-looking guy. Okay, he's like a babe magnet. Genesis 36 verse 6. Let's pick up there. So Potiphar let everything he had in Joseph's care. With Joseph in charge, he did not concern himself with anything except the food he ate. Now Joseph was well-built and handsome, and after a while his master's wife took notice of Joseph and said, "Come to bed with me." Subtle, right? I mean, that's wow, like worst pickup line ever. That's what she goes with. Potiphar's wife starts eyeing him, and she's not playing hard to get. She's like, "Do you believe in love at first sight, or do I need to walk by again?" You know, and that's not working on Joseph. So she's like, "Baby, you must be a broom because you just swept me off my feet." Nope, not working. None of these pickup lines are working. He's like, "No way." Joseph's like, "No way," because he knows it's not right. He knows this is somebody else's wife. It's his boss's wife. This is this is Potiphar's wife, and I mean this ain't this ain't even like Potiphar's second cousin's niece's sister. This is his wife, okay? But you know what? Even if it had been Potiphar's second cousin's niece's sister, he still would not have done anything because he was a man of character. He understood the importance of doing the right thing. He stuck by his morals, and he didn't take advantage of this situation. Genesis 39 verse 8. But he refused. With me in charge, he told her, my master does not concern himself with anything in the house. Everything he owns, he has entrusted to my care. No one is greater in this house than I am. My master has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. How then could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God? You know, one of the things that's actually really fascinating about this story is, and just think about this for a moment. How did Joseph know that was a sin? How did he know that? You know, and I know you're like, well, obvious. I mean, that's obvious, right? Well, here's the thing. We have the entire Bible. We have years of Sunday school or catechism or whatever you went to, right? Bible study. We've got the 10 Commandments. It's easy for us to know it's a sin, but for Joseph, the 10 Commandments, they hadn't even been given out yet, right? Like, that didn't even happen. So how could he know that this was a sin? Let me show you something, because this was, it was this one verse, just one verse, that not only told Joseph, but it told all of God's people that adultery was a sin. One verse. Turn back to Genesis 2, verse 24. That is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife, and they become one flesh. They got it all from one verse. They didn't have the 10 Commandments. They didn't have a whole Bible. They didn't have years ago into Sunday school. They had one verse. One verse. And you see these ancient people of God, they didn't have a lot of sayings from God, but they had a few, and they were smart, because you know what? They paid attention to every little detail. In fact, they learned a lot of different things just from this one sentence. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother. From that, they learned that incest was wrong, and he was joined to his wife, not wives, plural, but one wife. Polygamy's out. Forget that you saw whatever you saw on Sister Wives, okay, that's wrong. And they learned that sex outside of marriage was wrong. It says he is joined with his wife, not another man's wife. And here they learned that adultery is wrong. And there's so much more just packed into one verse. So Joseph knew that sleeping with Potiphar's wife would be wrong. The thing is, he probably could have gotten away with it. He probably could have. Like, Potiphar trusted him. Everybody trusted him. Potiphar trusted him completely. Potiphar's wife was so infatuated with Joseph, she wasn't going to go back and tell Potiphar. He had the opportunity to sin, but instead he held his ground. And then in verse 10, and though she spoke to Joseph day after day, after day, after day, after day, I added those in, but that's what she was doing. Get this. Here it is, verse 10. He refused to go to bed with her or even be with her, like even be in the same place or in the same room with her. He just wasn't going to do it. Day after day, this is going on, and this is something that is so astounding about Joseph's life. I mean, think about Daniel, right? He was in the lion's den for what? A short time, okay? Rakshak and Benny, okay? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, you might know that mess. They walk into the furnace and right back out again, okay? It's over with right away. But Joseph, he had to face his temptation day after day after day, and that's why we can say that Joseph was a man of such great character. He was a man of such great integrity. He's someone whose life we can examine and then try to emulate in our own lives. This went on for a long time until one day she got him alone, and when he would not give in to her advances, she tore off his coat and he ran outside. He ran away, tore off his clothes. He's running away naked. But we're gonna save that for the next episode. Okay, we'll save that for next week because we're all out of time. So until then, let's pray. God, thank you. Thank you for the story of Joseph. Thank you for such a great example for us to read a story like this and to be able to follow after the examples that are set before us. And God, help us to see that, help us to understand it, and then most of all, God, help us to have the strength to be people of integrity. We thank you for this in Jesus' name. Hey, God bless you. The Lord bless and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. God bless.